What is going on, YouTube? Andrew Miller from Hook'emHeadlines.com coming back at y'all today with my preview of the Sweet 16 matchup for the 2-seed Texas basketball. The Longhorns will be taking on the 3-seed Xavier Musketeers on Friday, March 24th. The Midwest region games move, or at least this one moves to the T-Mobile Center in Kansas City, Missouri. Texas will return to the spot where it was just playing a couple weeks ago, last week, for the Big 12 men's tournament. So familiar territory for Texas for sure, but this game will tip off at 6:30 p.m. Central Time, and I believe Texas opened up as a 3.5 point favorite. I think that line moved up to Texas by 4 or 4.5. But nonetheless, it is the shortest line of any game so far for the Longhorns. Xavier is also the highest seeded team that Texas has faced so far. Texas so far has beaten, the 15 seed Colgate Raiders 81-61 in the round of 64. And then last night beat the 10 seed Penn State Nittany Lions 71-66, a much closer game that kind of came down to the wire. The Xavier Musketeers got to this point by beating the 14 seed Kennesaw State Owls in the round of 64. And then in the round of 32, which happened earlier today, they took down the 11 seed Pitt Panthers. They beat Kennesaw State 72-67, and then today I believe it was 84-73 over Pitt. But they played their first two games at Greensboro Coliseum in North Carolina, and again we'll be moving over to T-Mobile Center. So probably going to feel more like a home atmosphere here for the Longhorns. I believe 3 games have been played by the Longhorns at T-Mobile Center this season, and since they won the Big 12 tournament crown last weekend, they will enter with a record of 3-0 at that arena, or at that venue. A couple other game notes coming into this. In terms of KenPom ranking, I believe Texas is number 5 in adjusted efficiency, and Xavier is number 16. So this is the best team that Texas has faced. Also in terms of KenPom adjusted efficiency so far, Penn State was number 33, Colgate was number 115. On the Xavier side of things, Texas is also the best team in terms of the KenPom ranking that they faced. Kennesaw State was 124 and Pitt was 64. So toughest matchup of the tournament, I would say probably for both teams so far. Granted, I do think that Penn State was the tougher round of 64 matchup for Texas than Xavier had with Pitt. Jalen Pickett is just kind of a different type of talent. Andrew Funk also was really, really hot for Penn State in the round of 64, hit 8 of 10 threes. But yeah, let me get into kind of some of the high-level overview markers for both teams. Again, obviously we're a Texas site, so I'm going to know more about the Longhorns than I will the Musketeers. But in kind of scouting out the Musketeers and what I know about head coach Sean Miller, also have watched a decent bit of Xavier basketball this season, including their first 2 games in the tournament, as well as the Big East tournament. So, I think that there's some nuggets, especially for you Longhorns fans out there, that might be able to help you get a better understanding of what Texas is facing in Xavier on Friday. So, just from a high level, Xavier is a team that really does like to push the pace. They like to run in transition. They're a very efficient offensive team, which is similar to what Texas has faced in the first 2 rounds. It feels like Texas has gotten some of the most efficient offensive teams in the entire country to open up the NCAA tournament. And like I said, Xavier is going to be no exception to that. Xavier comes into this game shooting around 49.5% from the field. That is 6th in the country. 39.1% from deep. That is 4th in the country. And it's also worth noting that they rank 1st in the country in assists per game at a mark of 19.2. Also ranked 20th in the country in offensive rating at 112.6. This is a team that moves the ball really well. Again, I mentioned pace. They play at a pace of a little north of 71 possessions per 40 minutes. That is good for, I believe, 36th in the country. And they also like to push the pace in transition. They get around 11 or 12 fast break points per game, which is good for a little north of the 80th percentile, I do believe. So all around, this is a team that like Texas is going to have to be really well prepared for and energized for defensively. There are a number of ways that Xavier can beat you. There's not one offensive set they like to run, and there's not just one thing that they hang their hat on offense. As some of the Sean Miller teams were known to get their points at Arizona when he was there throughout the 2010s and early 2020s. A team that can move the ball really well, a team that can post you up, a team that can beat you from the mid-range, as well as just off-ball cuts, high ball screens, things like that. There's a number of different ways that they can get the job done. The most notable, though, I mentioned three-point shooting earlier. While they do shoot the three ball at a good clip, they don't shoot it that often. I believe they are somewhere around 18 three-point attempts, around 19 three-point attempts on the season, which actually ranks 295th in the country. So, they're not going to take a ton of three-pointers, but at the same time, they have increased their three-point shooting frequency in the last 5 or 10 games, really since the start of the Big East tournament and in the NCAA tournament. They're starting to take threes from all over the court, too. They rank in the 62nd percentile in the last 5 games in three-point attempts from the corners, and then in the 79th percentile in three-point attempts from above the break. I believe in the last 5 games, they're taking around 20 or 21 three-point attempts per game. So again, something to watch for Texas. They are going to probably push the three ball a little bit more than they have for the rest of the season. I've mentioned their different shooting metrics. Xavier is a team that just loves to move the ball. They don't turn the ball over very much, around a dozen times per game. They can be prone to turnovers in more of a quantity volume because of the pace that they run at, but at an adjusted percentage, I believe their team turnover percentage is somewhere around 10 or 11, which is still easily in the top half of the country and in the top half of all major conference teams as well. They run their offense really through 2 guys. It really is an offense by committee approach that they take, but in terms of facilitating the offense, Colby Jones and Solly Boom are going to be the 2 guys to watch. They're 2 of the highest usage players on the team, at least among the starters and core rotation players, but they're also the 2 players that have an assist percentage above 20. Colby Jones, 6'6" wing, a guy that can do a lot of different things to do damage to opposing defenses. Along with a number of other Xavier players, he's a guy that shoots the three ball well at a clip of around 38% on the season. He also takes a good number of attempts as well, 3.3 attempts per game. But Colby Jones really does like to work inside the two-point arc. He takes around 11 or 12 field goal attempts per game, and most of those are going to come within about 10 feet from the basket. He's averaging a little north of 15 points per game. At least that was before the game today. And so, he's a guy that can score in a number of different ways, but he's more comfortable when he's closer to the basket. He's about 6'6", so I would imagine that this is going to be a matchup to watch for maybe a guy like Dylan Mitchell or Timmy Allen. He plays at the 3, so maybe even Serge-Abari Rice. Rice did a nice job defending guys like Jalen Pickett, like Andrew Funk when he was matched up against them yesterday. So, a couple different things to watch there for Colby Jones's game. Solly Boom is probably the name that, if you follow or if you've watched Xavier at all this season, that you've heard the most about. He's leading Xavier in scoring, tied for the lead in assists, and I believe he's leading them in three-point shooting percentage as well. He shoots the three ball really well. He takes a little north of 5 attempts per game, so he gets a lot of his points from beyond the arc, shooting at about 42% from deep on the year. 16.5 points per game, 4.3 rebounds, 4.3 assists, and 1 steal, and only turning it over around 1.9 times per game. 4.3 assists to 1.9 turnovers is one of the better assist to turnover ratios in all of college hoops, at least among some of the higher usage guys in the major conferences this season. And so, Boom, while he is a higher usage, not like an extremely high usage, but he does get a good amount of looks and facilitates the offense quite a bit. He is, by all intents and purposes, Xavier's starting point guard, but he does have the size to play more of a combo guard, and that is kind of the role he plays for Xavier, because again, they have multiple guys that can facilitate the offense and make plays. But yeah, like I said, Boom is a guy that's extremely efficient, can beat you again in a number of ways. He can get to the rim. He's got good size, getting around 6'3", 6'4". A lot of experience as well. This entire Colgate team has a lot of experience, though. I think according to Ken Palm, they're one of the 20 most experienced teams in the country. So both Xavier and Texas have a lot of games under their belt. A lot of seniors between both squads. And then a couple of other guys of note for Xavier. Jack Nunge, I believe that's how you say that, their center, 7-footer, can really do a lot of damage in terms of rebounding, rim protection. You know, he does have a good back to the basket game, but he's also a guy that can space the floor. He's shooting the 3-ball at a clip of 41% on the season, and taking a little north of 2.5 attempts per game. So, you know, he's got a good sample size there as well. But he's averaging 14 points, 14 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, almost 1.5 blocks. You know, he's not an elite rim protector by any means, but, you know, he's still got the length to be disruptive around the rim, but also a guy that helps Xavier in the rebounding department as well. Xavier's a pretty good rebounding team. They average net rebounds of about +5 per game, and so more often than not, they are winning the rebounding battle. I will say that Texas probably has a chance to get some work done on the offensive glass, again, with how much Xavier's bigs do like to move around and draw out. You have a chance to get some good positioning along the inside, and again, for that reason of Xavier's starting 5 liking to draw beyond the 3-point line on a lot of possessions. Xavier doesn't do super hot in the offensive rebounding department, mark of about 10 per game this season. And again, pace adjusted, they're even worse. They're around 170th in the country in terms of pace adjusted offensive rebounding percentage. Pace adjusted offensive rebounds per game. So yeah, all in all, again, this is an Xavier team that really does like to move the ball freely. They like to run at a high pace, number of different sets they can run. They can run the pick and roll. They can post you up. You know, they can also get catch and shoot, spot up looks. They pretty much rank in terms of points per possession and different play styles. Among some of the core plays, the college hoops fans will know they pretty much rank in the 80th percentile or higher in all of them. Again, from the perspective of just offensive efficiency, there's a lot of things that they do really well. You know, Texas has dealt with 2 really good offensive teams, though, in the last 2 rounds in Penn State and Colgate, holding them under 70 points in each game. And so, you know, this is a challenge that Texas has dealt with before. It's just, I think Xavier's probably the most talented and, you know, distributes the basketball better than any team Texas has faced in the tournament so far. So, a new challenge for Rodney Terry and company, but again, something that I think that Texas will be up to the task in terms of defensive chops. You know, I was really impressed with the way guys like Timmy Allen and Serge Bari Rice, Marcus Carr performed on the defensive end of the floor, obviously Dylan Dessou as well. You know, having to match up against, again, I mentioned like Andrew Funk, Jalen Pickett, those sort of guys from Penn State. Not an easy task, but Texas did a really nice job, again, limiting a Penn State offense that was averaging around 78, 80 points per game this season to 66 yesterday. So, again, this will be a new challenge, but Rodney Terry and co have showed throughout pretty much the entirety of the last month, at least the last like 3 or 4 weeks, that they're up for the task. A few other things here that I want to note in terms of, you know, Xavier's background and really how they match up. You know, I've spent a lot of time talking about their offense. Their defense, not as good. 196th in the country in defensive rating at 102.5. They allow somewhere in the ballpark of around 74 points per game, which is 290th in the country. They defend the paint pretty well, just thanks to they're one of the longer teams, one of the lengthier teams in the NCAA tournament at this point, or just in the entire 68 team field in general. And so they can be disruptive in the paint or closer to the basket, but again, they are a team that doesn't really have a true rim protector at all times. Again, their 5 is a 7-footer, but you know, he will switch from time to time. This is a team that can switch. They will play some switching basketball on defense, and you'll have your opportunities to drive the lane. You'll have opportunities also to kick the ball out to the outside. They don't defend the corner super well. It looks like the closeouts are a bit of an issue. They rank just in the 9th percentile in terms of corner 3-point percentage allowed. So this could be a game for guys like Marcus Carr, Tyrese Hunter, namely, that are shooting the corner 3 ball at a clip north of 38% on the season. Even Arterio Morris, if he gets a little bit more run in this game, I know his playing time's been extremely limited so far in the tournament, but he's shooting the 3 ball from the corners about 45% on the season. He's been really good there. And so that could be something to watch in this game. They don't defend the mid-range super well either. That's a spot that Texas has been pretty lethal. So, this might just be a game of who can score more points. That's kind of the way that Xavier had played in the first 2 rounds so far. They were able to really get the jump on Pitt in the second half today, and then they had an impressive comeback. I think they were down like 12, 14 points, something like that, against Kennesaw State, and ended up winning by 5. Kennesaw State gave them a lot of issues. They managed the basketball really well, only turned the ball over a few times. And, I'm going to transition here to talking about just keys to victory for Texas here in a moment and how I feel Texas matches up. But, I think Kennesaw State can be, and Marquette in the Big East Championship game, 2 games that it gave Xavier all they could handle. I think that those are going to be two games to watch in terms of if you're looking at film for Texas and trying to figure out how to pick some flaws apart for Xavier. And then again, in terms of defensive numbers, defensive acumen for Xavier, I think Texas, you just have to manage the basketball well. Xavier is not a team that's going to turn you over a ton. They average somewhere in the ballpark of like 11 or 12 opponent turnovers per game, which is outside the top 100 in the country. They don't get a lot of blocks, around 3 or 4 per game, and then steals somewhere in the ballpark of like 6 or 7 per game. So just avoid untimely turnovers. Texas has been moving the ball pretty well, done a nice job avoiding turnovers. I think they've stayed in the single digits at each of the first 2 games of the tournament, and so just keep doing what you've been doing. And I think Texas will be put in a good spot to win. There are 2 stats that I'll mention here before I get into again how I feel about Texas's chances in this game. But I guess I'll start here. Xavier has played well against Quad 1 teams so far this season. They have a record of 9-6 plus 2.2 net rating, so it's not like they're just going to shy away from this game. They've done well against Quad 1 teams this season. Granted, I think Texas is like 15-8 on the season, with like a +6 net rating. So both teams that have faced plenty of quality opponents and done well for the most part. But in terms of Xavier, how you beat Xavier, you just have to limit their overall offensive efficiency. I've mentioned quite a few like more nitpicky stats, but for Xavier, the 2 main things are you have to limit their scoring in the paint. They average around 39 points in the paint per game, which is good for top 20 in the entire country. And they score around the basket very efficiently. They can get a lot of good looks from the 3-point line, so you at least have to contest there. They move the ball really well, so it's a team that hasn't been contested a whole lot from the 3-point line this season. So Texas being able to close out in an efficient manner there, or in an effective manner probably is a better way to do it. At least getting hands in their face is going to be huge. Penn State was a good, tough shot-making team. Xavier, not as much. So this is all kind of leading to this stat that I want to talk about, where if you can, be disruptive early and often, and you can at least contest in the paint and from the 3-point line for Xavier, you're going to be on a good track to limit their overall offensive efficiency. In games this season where they've had a defensive rating worse than 102, I believe they are 0-8. And so if you get them out, again, this is a team that relies so much on, running at a fast pace and just playing efficient offensive basketball, that if you can get them out of sorts early, that's going to be a huge way to put yourself in a favorable spot to come away with a win. And in the case of the Longhorns, advance to the Elite 8. Another thing is, if you can limit turnovers yourself, there are 9 games this season where Xavier's opponents have turned the ball over fewer than 7 times, and I believe Xavier's 8 or 9 times. And Xavier has 2 wins in those games. So one of those wins was Kennesaw State. So they played a lot of close games and lost a lot of games where they couldn't turn the ball over from opponents. Again, this is not a super disruptive defensive team, but if you do make untimely turnovers and you allow Xavier to play at their own pace, control the game, control the flow of the game end to end, you let them get out, run in transition, you let them get in their offensive sets, and you really don't take advantage of the ability to pick apart some of their flaws on the defensive end that they've shown throughout most of the season. And so limiting turnovers here, good offense is going to turn into good defense for the Longhorns, I do believe. And so, limiting turnovers, limiting Xavier's offensive efficiency. I know those are 2 big things, but I think those are the 2 things Texas has to do to be able to win this game. Again, Xavier has a lot of guys that can get the job done. Sully Boo and Colby Jones being 2 of the guys to really watch. We'll probably do a more in-depth preview here of this game later this week. I know I kind of dug in pretty deep here on some of these stats, but this is just my take on a lot of these. We'll have probably Shane and maybe Tarek here later this week to go more in depth for this matchup. But this game, I could see it going either way because both Xavier and Texas are really good teams. Both teams really good on offense. Texas a better defensive team though. As long as Texas is able to still get some big contributions around the basket from guys namely like Dylan Dessou, but also Timmy Allen and Christian Bishop, and you continue to get good, at least solid production from Serge Bari Rice, from Marcus Carr, even though he's been a little hot and cold lately. Still get something from him, and Tyrese Hunter's been playing with a lot of energy lately as well. Then Texas again will be in a good spot to come away with a win. I'm thinking this game will be played at a faster pace. Texas plays at kind of a moderate pace. They rank in the middle of the pack in the country in terms of possessions per game, around 67 on the season. But I think Xavier is going to push that mark a little bit higher. I think that would probably put it in the ballpark of a 70 to 75 point game for each team. I'm going to go Texas winning 76-71. Ken Palm has this at 79-75 Texas. But Texas has been, again, depending on who they've been playing, they were just able to make it rain from 3 against Colgate, but Colgate was only held to 61 points. So again, I think it's going to be probably in the 70s. Maybe it does creep up into the 80s though. A high-scoring game wouldn't surprise me, and we'll see how my mind changes as we go along later in the week. But anyway, that is a lot of scattered stats and different things to watch for the Longhorns and the Musketeers in this game. I'm excited. I think this is going to be a high-octane game. Anyway, for Andrew Miller at Hook'emHeadlines.com, that is pretty much it. Hook 'em.